scientists opened a 4,000-year-old Egyptian tomb, and everything changed. A mummy that was not human led researchers to the location of an entire kingdom lost to history. A strange skeleton with a perfectly square-shaped skull made many people believe it was an extraterrestrial being. Smoke-preserved mummies from 12,000 years ago in Southeast Asia seemed ordinary at first, but they revealed a mysterious ritual that had never been fully documented. And most astonishing of all, a tomb sealed for 4,000 years in Egypt has just rewritten human history in a way no one ever expected. Have you ever wondered, is the history we know today truly complete? Or are there still ancient civilizations, forgotten rituals, and secrets that have never been fully uncovered? Hello, and welcome to Ancient History, the channel where we follow the trail of the most shocking archaeological discoveries in the world. From ancient tombs sealed for thousands of years in Egypt, to mysterious mummies found in Mexico, to ghost ships loaded with treasure resting deep beneath the waters off the coast of Spain, all of them are slowly revealing pieces of the truth that history once hid away. And what makes it even more fascinating is that the deeper researchers dig into these ancient ruins, the more they realize something terrifying. Some secrets of the past remain far beyond the understanding of modern humanity today. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into each of these discoveries and bring the dark mysteries hidden in the shadows into the light. So, are you ready to explore with me? If you are, then let's begin right now. 4,000-year-old tomb, with two nested coffins and the terrifying secret hidden inside, shocked the entire world. In 2024, during excavations at an ancient cemetery in Asyut, Egypt, archaeologists discovered the resting place of a woman named Idi, the daughter of Jefi, a powerful governor of the Asyut region during ancient Egypt. According to historical records, Idi lived during the reign of Pharaoh Senwosret I, around 1961 to 1917 BC. Her identity alone would have been enough to capture the attention of researchers, but believe it or not, the discovery that truly left the entire excavation team speechless was hidden deep inside the ancient tomb itself. As layers of rock and soil that had remained untouched for thousands of years were slowly removed, archaeologists uncovered two enormous coffins nested inside one another. One coffin rested perfectly inside the other, as if the ancient Egyptians had intentionally created a secret protective layer for the deceased. Archaeologists reported that the outer coffin measured about 8.5 feet long, while the inner coffin measured approximately 7.5 feet. This type of structure is extremely rare in ancient Egyptian archaeology, because very few tombs have survived in such an almost perfectly preserved condition after thousands of years of erosion and relentless tomb robbers. According to Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, discovering two nearly intact layers of coffins like this is extraordinarily rare. But perhaps what fascinated scientists the most were the rows of hieroglyphic inscriptions carved across the surfaces of the coffins. These ancient texts were not merely decorative. The ancient Egyptians believed they served as instructions for the soul of the dead on its journey into the afterlife. In other words, they functioned like a spiritual map, guiding the deceased through darkness and toward eternity. Just imagine that more than 4 millennia ago, people devoted an incredible amount of effort simply to prepare for life after death. That alone reveals how powerful their belief in the afterlife truly was. Kathleen Cooney, a professor specializing in ancient Egyptian art and architecture, described the discovery as extraordinary. According to her, the inscriptions on the coffins could help humanity better understand the spiritual beliefs of the ancient Egyptians thousands of years ago. Meanwhile, Caroline Arbuckle, an associate professor of history at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada, although not directly involved in the excavation, also stated that these texts may reveal even more secrets about how the ancient Egyptians viewed the afterlife. What makes the story even more remarkable is that Idi's tomb had actually been looted in ancient times. Yet strangely enough, part of her skeletal remains still survived inside. Through bone analysis, scientists believe Idi may have died before reaching the age of 40. They also discovered evidence suggesting she had a congenital deformity in one foot. It may seem like a small detail, but it suddenly makes the image of a woman who lived more than 4,000 years ago feel hauntingly real. And the discoveries did not stop there. Archaeologists also uncovered the coffin lid along with two small wooden statues placed inside the burial chamber. One of the statues is believed to depict Idi herself during her lifetime. If confirmed, It would be an extremely rare artifact, because burial objects directly portraying the deceased from this period are uncommon. The second statue depicts a woman in procession, and according to Professor Francesco Tiradritti from Corre University in Italy, it may represent Edie's soul leaving the tomb and journeying into the afterlife. Egyptologist Wolfram Grajecki from University College London also noted that the hieroglyphic inscriptions described Idie as the Lady of the House, a title that reflected her status and role within ancient Egyptian society. He further emphasized that over the past 130 years, many similar tombs have been discovered in Asyut, but most of their artifacts were either lost or scattered among museums around the world. That is precisely why the discovery of this tomb by a modern research team, together with its complete archaeological data, has become something incredibly valuable to the scientific community. Just think about it. A woman who lived more than 4,000 years ago, resting silently within two mysterious layers of coffins beneath the Egyptian desert, carrying with her beliefs about the soul, death, and the afterlife that humanity still does not fully understand even today. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? Ghost ship, carrying an enormous treasure, appears after 400 years. This shocking discovery happened purely by accident during a seabed dredging operation intended to expand a container port near the city of Cadiz, Spain. As workers dug through the thick layers of mud beneath the ocean floor, they unexpectedly uncovered ancient wooden fragments along with numerous strange metal artifacts buried deep underwater. Sensing that something unusual had been found, they immediately notified local authorities. Soon afterward, archaeologists were dispatched to the site, and what they saw left everyone stunned. It was, in fact, the wreck of a massive ship that had been lying at the bottom of the sea for hundreds of years. The mysterious vessel was later named Delta Went by archaeologists. Believe it or not, after only the first rounds of excavation, researchers quickly realized this was no ordinary shipwreck. Hidden inside the ghost ship was an actual treasure trove. Archaeologists recovered as many as 27 ancient cannons and 18 massive silver ingots from inside the wreck. The silver alone weighed nearly half a ton. Most remarkably, one of the silver bars was clearly engraved with the year 1667, an extremely important detail that helped researchers determine both the age of the cargo and the approximate time the ship sank into the depths of the sea. After further analysis, experts concluded that Delta Went had been built according to the Ibero-Atlantic maritime tradition and had once operated under French command during the second half of the 17th century. It was a merchant ship designed to transport goods across the Atlantic during a period when Europe was consumed by fierce economic and military rivalries. What makes the discovery even more intriguing is that the ship was carrying not only silver, but weapons as well. Archaeologists identified 5 different cannon calibers aboard the vessel, many of which dated back to the late 16th century. However, some of the cannons were severely damaged and were even missing important components. This has sparked countless mysterious theories. Had the ship once taken part in a bloody naval battle before sinking to the ocean floor? Or were these simply old cannons being used as ballast during a transatlantic voyage? To this day, researchers still cannot provide a definitive answer, but one thing seems almost certain. Delta Y was hiding an extremely dangerous and illegal trade network behind its journey. According to experts, the silver discovered aboard the ship was likely connected to the illegal smuggling operations that flourished throughout Europe during the 17th century. At that time, the Spanish Empire strictly controlled the transportation of precious metals from the Americas back to Europe. Because of these restrictions, many merchants secretly smuggled silver through maritime routes in order to avoid the control of the Spanish crown. And Cadiz, during that era, happened to be one of the busiest commercial centers in Spain. Thanks to its strategic natural harbor, the city quickly became one of the most important trade hubs in the Atlantic world. But alongside wealth came rampant smuggling that spread throughout the surrounding waters. The simultaneous discovery of silver and weapons aboard Delta One paints an incredibly chaotic picture of that era. A world where commerce, war, and greed became deeply intertwined among the great European powers. Just thinking about it is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? Massive cemetery, containing 174 Warring States tombs discovered in China. More than 2,200 years ago, in the region of Xiangyang in China's Hubei province, a massive cemetery was silently buried beneath the earth. No stone markers, no visible traces, and no one knew that beneath the modern city of today lay hundreds of ancient tombs along with countless treasures dating back to the Warring States period. The ancient burial site known as Baizhuang Cemetery. It was not until recently, during an archaeological excavation at the site, that layer after layer of history, dormant for thousands of years, finally began to emerge. At first, archaeologists believed they were simply studying an ordinary ancient burial ground like many others. But the deeper they dug into the earth, the more astonishing discoveries they uncovered. Ancient tombs began appearing one after another beneath the thick layers of soil. Soon, the number quickly rose into the hundreds. As of now, archaeologists have discovered a total of 176 ancient tombs at Baizhuang Cemetery. Among them, 174 tombs have been identified as dating back to the Warring States period, which lasted from 475 to 221 BC, one of the most chaotic and bloodiest eras in ancient Chinese history. The remaining 2 tombs belong to the Han Dynasty, which existed from 202 BC to AD 220. For more than 22 centuries, an entire world of the dead remained hidden silently beneath humanity's feet without anyone realizing it. Isn't that incredible? According to one member of the research team, most of the tombs discovered were relatively small earthen burials. However, what made the site especially remarkable was the presence of 9 medium-sized tombs built with far more sophisticated designs. These tombs were labeled M1 through M9 and featured structures resembling small mausoleums, complete with sloped passageways leading deep into the burial chambers below. The architecture alone suggests that the owners of these tombs may once have been individuals of high status or wealthy members of Warring States society. But the real mystery only began when archaeologists entered 2 ancient tombs marked M3 and M4. Although time had caused most of the wooden coffins to decay almost completely, experts still discovered bluish-gray traces of decomposition remaining beneath the soil. Surrounding them were numerous valuable burial objects that had rested undisturbed for more than 2,200 years. Bronze tripods, ancient swords, bronze basins, bronze spoons, and even horse bones gradually appeared before the eyes of archaeologists. By looking at these artifacts, researchers could begin to imagine the lifestyle, social status, and spiritual beliefs of the people who lived during the Warring States era. For ancient people, death was not simply the end. They buried the deceased alongside their most important possessions, as though preparing them for another life in the world beyond. What amazed archaeologists even more was the enormous number of artifacts uncovered. In total, approximately 500 different artifacts were excavated from the 174 Warring States tombs. These included ancient pottery, bronze ritual objects, antique combs, jade rings, and many other culturally significant relics. Experts stated that, at more than 2,200 years old, all of these artifacts are considered priceless treasures not only in terms of economic value, but also for their immense scientific importance to the study of ancient Chinese history. These objects had remained underground since the era when rival states battled each other with swords and spears. Through wars, natural disasters, and countless historical upheavals, they survived until today like a doorway into the past. Most importantly, the discoveries at Baizhuang Cemetery are providing researchers with an incredibly valuable new source of information for studying ancient funeral customs, daily life, and the culture of the people who once lived in the Xiangyang region. And as many of you may already know, Xiangyang has long been regarded as one of the most historically rich regions in China. It once served as a strategically important location during many historical periods and remains a place filled with countless unsolved mysteries. Even now, excavations at the ancient Baizhuang Cemetery are still ongoing, because deep beneath the earth, there may still be unopened coffins, unseen artifacts, and secrets that have slept silently for more than 2,000 years, waiting for humanity to uncover them. 7 strange mummies found inside caves in Saudi Arabia. In a barren desert region near the city of Arar in northern Saudi Arabia, scientists unexpectedly discovered something that left the entire research community stunned. 7 mummies hidden deep inside dark caves, and these mummies were not human. There were no linen wrappings, no ancient burial rituals, yet they had been preserved in a bizarre way that closely resembled Egyptian mummies. The study was conducted by an international team of scientists from Saudi Arabia, Austria, Australia, and Poland, led by researcher Ahmed Al-Bug, Director of Terrestrial Conservation at the National Center for Wildlife Conservation in Riyadh. The findings, published in the scientific journal Communications Earth and Environment, quickly captured worldwide attention. Inside the cave system near Arar, researchers discovered 7 strange mummified remains along with the bones of 54 other cheetahs, Acinonyx jubatus. Most shocking of all, some of the specimens were dated to more than 4,200 years ago, meaning they existed during a time when many ancient civilizations around the world had not yet fully developed. These mummies were not created by humans. No human hands intervened, and no ancient preservation techniques were used. Everything was entirely the work of nature. According to the researchers, the secret lies within the extreme desert environment itself. When a cheetah died in this arid region, its body rapidly lost moisture before bacteria could fully decompose it. In addition, many of the carcasses became buried beneath fine sand, completely cutting off oxygen, a critical factor in preventing biological decomposition. The combination of extreme heat, extremely low humidity, and sealed cave environments created a rare form of natural preservation. In a way, it was like a race against time, where death arrived, but decomposition became frozen during its earliest stages. Among the 7 mummies discovered, scientists identified differences in origin. The oldest specimens belonged to a West African cheetah lineage, while the younger samples were linked to Asian cheetahs. This suggests that the Arabian Peninsula was once home to a far more diverse cheetah population than it is today. Sadly, cheetahs have now disappeared from most of their historical range. According to statistics, the species has gone extinct in approximately 91% of the areas where it once existed, and cheetahs have not been seen on the Arabian Peninsula for several decades. As you can see, these seemingly bizarre mummies are not merely scientific artifacts. They are among the last remaining pieces of evidence of an animal world that once thrived but is gradually disappearing with time. Not only that, but this discovery also helps scientists better understand how desert environments can naturally preserve animal remains. Million-year-old stone tools are rewriting the history of human evolution. For a long time, we have always believed that species belonging to the genus Homo, the direct ancestors of modern humans, Homo sapiens, were the first beings capable of creating and using tools. But a series of new discoveries from Africa is forcing the scientific world to ask a very different question. If it was not Homo, then who truly opened the tool-making era of humanity? The story begins at archaeological sites in Kenya, where 2 locations, Lomekwi and Nyayanga, have produced evidence so remarkable that it may rewrite the history of evolution itself. At Lomekwi, scientists discovered stone tools dating back as far as 3.3 million years ago. Meanwhile, at Nyayanga, researchers uncovered similar tools approximately 3 million years old, along with a fossilized tooth belonging to the genus Paranthropus, another branch within the human tribe Hominini, but not part of the Homo genus as we once assumed. Just think about that for a moment. These primitive tools existed even before the very first Homo species appeared on Earth, which was only around 2.5 to 2.8 million years ago. What does that mean? Doesn't it suggest that the ownership of humanity's first tools may no longer belong exclusively to Homo with certainty? There is even more evidence supporting this idea. At Kubifora, also in Kenya, scientists discovered an almost complete fossil of a Paranthropus boisei individual, an ancient hominin species that lived millions of years ago. But the most astonishing detail was not the skeleton itself, it was the hands. The hand structure of Paranthropus boisei suggests that this species was fully capable of gripping and manipulating tools. The ratio between the thumb and the other fingers was surprisingly similar to that of modern humans, allowing for precise movements while holding objects. However, unlike Homo, their hands were stronger but less flexible. Researchers believe this trait may have been connected to their diet, since Paranthropus boisei is often referred to as the nutcracker man, known for processing tough and fibrous plant materials. That very need may have driven the development of powerful hands suitable for using primitive stone tools associated with prehistoric Oldowan technology. And it was not just the hands. The structure of their fingers and toes also revealed major evolutionary changes. The curvature of the bones was significantly reduced compared to African apes and even some ancient Homo species, such as Homo naledi. This suggests they were no longer heavily dependent on climbing trees and had already begun adapting to movement on the ground. In other words, Paranthropus boisei was not merely capable of walking, it was gradually becoming a species capable of using tools. And if this is true, then the history of humanity may be turning upside down in a way no one ever expected. For decades, we believed that only Homo possessed the intelligence necessary to create tools. But now, archaeological evidence is pointing toward a completely different possibility, that an ancient species of Paranthropus may have been the first to hold primitive stone tools in its hands, marking the very beginning of the evolutionary journey that followed. As you can see, the story of human evolution has never been a simple straight line. It is more like a vast and complicated maze with countless branches, where multiple species coexisted, evolved, and left behind traces of themselves in ways we are only just beginning to understand. So saying that the discoveries at Lomekwi, Nyanga, and Kubifora are not merely archaeological puzzle pieces, but also a reminder that we may have misunderstood a huge part of our own origins. Would not be an exaggeration at all, would it? The oldest mummies in Asia and the smoke ritual that preserved bodies for 12,000 years. Did you know that across the vast region stretching from Southeast Asia to China, archaeologists are gradually uncovering a phenomenon so strange that it is forcing scientists to rethink many assumptions about how ancient humans faced death? That phenomenon is the discovery of numerous mummies dating from 4,000 to as far back as 12,000 years ago, found in ancient burial sites across China, the Philippines, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And they all share one astonishing similarity. They were not preserved using modern embalming techniques or wrapped in linen like Egyptian mummies. Instead, they were preserved with smoke. The research team, led by archaeologist Xiao Chun Hung from the Australian National University, conducted investigations at dozens of ancient sites throughout the region. And what they uncovered was not merely a collection of skeletal remains, but an entire system of complex burial rituals that lasted for thousands of years. Rather than being buried immediately after death, these bodies underwent a special process. They were smoked for extended periods before being placed in tombs. It was this method that preserved the bodies in such a remarkable way, allowing them to survive to this day in an almost intact condition. Even more fascinating is the fact that these mummies were not laid flat like those in many other civilizations. Instead, they were often found in tightly flexed positions, with their bodies intentionally curled inward. This was not accidental, but rather part of a highly symbolic burial ritual. To better understand the process, researchers used modern analytical techniques such as X-ray diffraction and infrared spectroscopy. The results showed that the bodies had been exposed to heat after death, but only at low levels, not enough to completely cremate them. At the same time, soot residue was found on the surface of the bones, providing clear evidence of a prolonged smoking process carried out in a controlled environment. So what does that mean? It means this was not an isolated natural phenomenon, but a deliberate ritual repeatedly practiced by multiple ancient communities. In fact, the appearance of the same type of mummy across countries stretching from East Asia to Southeast Asia suggests that this may once have been a widespread tradition among early agricultural societies. It was not simply a method of handling the dead, but may also have carried profound spiritual, religious, or cultural meaning. Researchers believe that for ancient people, smoke may have served as a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the dead. By smoking the body, they may have believed the soul could be preserved or guided more completely into another world. But surprisingly, this ritual did not entirely disappear with time. During a field study in Papua, Indonesia, scientists personally witnessed several indigenous groups, such as the Dani and Pumo peoples, still practicing similar traditions even today. They tightly bind the body of the deceased, place it on a raised wooden platform, light a fire beneath it, and allow smoke to surround the body for long periods of time. The process continues until the body turns completely black, creating what appears to be a real-life smoke mummy. A ritual that once seemed to belong only to distant prehistory is still surviving in our modern world, and that creates a strange connection between the past and the present, where humanity's relationship with death may not have changed nearly as much as we once believed. These discoveries, stretching from China to Southeast Asia, are not only helping scientists better understand ancient preservation techniques, but are also raising a much bigger question. Why did so many different cultures choose smoke as a method connected to the dead? What do you think the answer might be? DNA from mummified baboons reveals a lost location in ancient Egyptian history. You know, history is fascinating. Some mysteries seem buried forever, yet sometimes just a single fragment of DNA preserved inside a non-human mummy can shake humanity's entire understanding of the past. And this time, the discovery stunning the scientific world is not a pharaoh or a golden tomb. It is a collection of strange baboon mummies found in Egypt, dating back to the New Kingdom period, around 1500 to 1070 BC. And unbelievably, these mummies may lead humanity to a much larger question. Did the Kingdom of Punt, a land frequently mentioned in ancient Egyptian texts but never definitively located on any map, actually exist? These mummified specimens were discovered by scientists at several archaeological sites throughout Egypt. They were not human, but baboons, animals that once held sacred significance in ancient Egyptian belief systems and were associated with deities such as Babi and Thoth. But what truly captured researchers' attention was not their unusual appearance, it was the information locked inside their bodies, chemical signatures and DNA. According to the research team led by primatologist Nathaniel Dominy from Dartmouth University, they were not originally searching for a legendary kingdom. Their goal was simply to analyze molecules preserved within the baboon mummies in order to study the animal's diet and habitat. But those biological clues unexpectedly opened an entirely different door. According to ancient Egyptian legends, these creatures were believed to have come from a mysterious land called Punt, a lost kingdom repeatedly referenced in ancient texts but never clearly identified on the modern world map. Then the first clues began to emerge. Chemical analysis of the ancient mummies showed that the baboons did not originate in Egypt. Instead, they came from a broad region encompassing present-day Somalia, Eritrea, and Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa. This made the theory regarding the location of Punt increasingly convincing. But the real breakthrough occurred when researchers expanded their analysis to include younger mummy samples dating from 800 to 540 BC. They then compared those samples with DNA from 14 modern baboons of known origin collected during the 19th and 20th centuries. And that is when something remarkable happened. One DNA sample showed the closest relationship to baboon populations living along the coastal regions of modern-day Eritrea. This became the crucial puzzle piece that allowed scientists to narrow down the possible location of the Kingdom of Punt. As a result, the researchers reached a stunning conclusion. The legendary Kingdom of Punt may indeed have been a real place, located near the ancient port city of Adulis in what is now Eritrea, in northeastern Africa. Can you imagine that? A kingdom once considered mythical and vaguely described in ancient records is now slowly taking shape through the DNA of animal mummies. This discovery not only changes the way we view ancient Egyptian history, but also reveals that ancient trade networks were far more complex than previously believed. After all, baboons are not native to Egypt. They do not naturally exist along the Nile River. Instead, they were transported and traded over long distances, possibly because of their religious significance or sacred symbolism. Some theories even suggest that the ancient Egyptians may have kept baboons as elite pets or holy creatures before mummifying them in special rituals. And through those very practices, they unintentionally left behind crucial evidence of ancient trade networks connecting Egypt with the Horn of Africa. That evidence is now revealing an entirely new picture of how civilizations were connected thousands of years ago. Pretty fascinating, isn't it? Mysterious skeleton, found in an ancient Mexican tomb, reveals a skull-shaping ritual that shocked archaeologists. Deep inside an ancient tomb in northeastern Mexico, archaeologists unexpectedly discovered a skeleton more than 1,000 years old with a bizarre skull shape never before recorded in the history of the region. The skull was not rounded like that of an ordinary person. Instead, it appeared almost square-shaped, as if it had been intentionally molded very early in life. The discovery was made in the state of Tamaulipas, Mexico, and was announced by Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH. According to experts, this is the first time in the archaeological history of the region that a skeleton with such a square-shaped head has been found inside an ancient tomb. Because of this, the discovery immediately raised a major question. Was this evidence of a strange lost civilization, or simply a forgotten ritual lost to time? To answer that question, researchers explained that this was not the result of disease or extraterrestrial influence, as some theories had suggested. Instead, it was the product of a deliberate skull modification practice carried out in ancient societies. The tomb belonged to a man over 40 years old who lived during the classic Mesoamerican period, around AD 400 to 900. The skeleton was discovered at the archaeological site of Balcón de Montezuma, located within the Sierra Madre Oriental mountain range along the Gulf of Mexico region. Researchers consider this the first evidence of intentional cranial deformation ever found in this specific area, an ancient settlement that once existed among the rugged mountains of Mexico. Although this square-head style is less common than the elongated skull shapes seen in other ancient civilizations, similar practices have appeared at archaeological sites such as El Zapotal in the state of Veracruz, as well as in regions once associated with the Maya civilization. However, each location displayed its own distinct style. At El Zapotal, the forehead was typically flattened while extending upward more prominently. At Balcón de Montezuma, however, the skull tended to have a lower forehead and a much more visibly square appearance. So why did these differences exist? Scientists believe this was not random, but rather evidence of different cultural standards among ancient communities throughout the region. To investigate further, the research team analyzed stable oxygen isotopes in bone bioapatite, along with collagen extracted from the teeth of another skeleton found nearby. The results revealed that the individuals buried in this ancient cemetery were entirely local people who had been born and lived their entire lives within the Sierra Madre Oriental region. What does that mean? It means this community was not a migrant population arriving from elsewhere, but an indigenous society that developed its own customs directly within the region. The 2,700-year-old tomb of the princess, wearing an upside-down crown near Athens, Greece. Beneath what seemed like peaceful ground about 59 miles northwest of Athens, Greece, an archaeological mystery suddenly emerged from beneath the earth, leaving scientists with a long list of unanswered questions. It is the mystery of a lavish 2,700-year-old tomb where a mysterious princess was buried with an upside-down crown placed directly on her head. At first, that may sound like only a small detail, right? But that strange image has opened the door to an entire story about power, collapse, and the violent upheavals of an era long buried in history. So why do I say that? Let's dive deeper into the discovery and find out. According to reports from Live Science and the Greek Ministry of Culture, the tomb was discovered within an ancient cemetery near Athens, Greece, a region that once thrived during the period from around 800 to 323 BC. Among roughly 40 tombs excavated at the site, this particular burial, the resting place of a young woman believed to have lived during the 7th century BC, attracted the greatest attention. The woman was only around 20 to 30 years old when she died. But what astonished archaeologists was not simply her young age, but the evidence suggesting that she once held an extremely high social status in ancient Greek society. Inside the tomb, researchers discovered numerous bronze grave goods and valuable materials, making it clear that she was no ordinary person. There were finely crafted geometric-style hairpins, a necklace with a vase-shaped amulet, beads made from bone and ivory, bronze earrings, bracelets, and multiple carefully crafted spiral ornaments. Yet all of those objects seemed overshadowed by one central artifact, the bronze crown placed upon the woman's head, and the strangest detail was the way it had been positioned. Not upright like a symbol of authority, but upside down. This crown was far more than a simple piece of jewelry. It was crafted with remarkable skill. On the front was a large rosette symbolizing sacredness and power, while the back featured engravings of a male and female lion facing one another. In ancient Greek culture, lions symbolized royalty and supreme authority, much like the famous Lion Gate at Mycenae, once the center of power for ancient kings. So why would such a symbol of power be placed upside down on this woman's head? To answer that question, scientists proposed a shocking theory. The inverted crown may have represented abdication, the loss of power, or perhaps even the collapse of a political order. The period in which this woman was buried also coincided with a turbulent era in ancient Greek history, when society was undergoing dramatic changes in power and social structure. Perhaps this princess wearing an upside-down crown was not merely an individual, but a symbol of an entire age slowly falling apart. 5,300-year-old tomb in the Nile Valley hides a mystery that could rewrite the origins of Egypt's pharaoh religion. You know, right in the middle of the harsh yet powerful land of Egypt's Nile Valley, the birthplace of one of the greatest civilizations in human history, archaeologists have uncovered a discovery so shocking that it has forced scientists to reconsider everything they believed for hundreds of years. Not pyramids, not hidden gold treasures, but more than 500 ancient tombs at the Adaima Cemetery, dating back as far as 5,300 years ago, long before the pharaohs rose to power or the Great Pyramids were ever built. These tombs are quietly telling the story of the true origins of ancient Egyptian religion. For many years, researchers believed that ancient Egyptian religion, often called the pharaoh religion, originated among the royal elite before spreading to ordinary people. Under that view, the pharaohs were seen as living gods, standing between humanity and the divine world while holding absolute sacred authority. But Adaima tells a completely different story. A story that began not in royal palaces, but in the simplest rural communities. Led by archaeologist Emmeline Alcouf from the University of Toulouse in France, the research team analyzed hundreds of ancient graves at the site and discovered something remarkable. The earliest funeral rituals here were not royal at all. Instead, they emerged from the spiritual lives of ordinary people. It was these common communities that laid the very first foundations for the religious symbols later associated with ancient Egypt. Among the most astonishing discoveries was Tomb S166. Inside this tomb were the remains of a teenage girl, and what sent chills through researchers was the unusual burial ritual. Her left arm had been ceremonially severed and placed across her chest. Her tomb was also carefully aligned with the sunset on the winter solstice, a moment of enormous importance in the natural cycle. But that was not all. Her coffin had also been positioned in direct alignment with Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which ancient Egyptians viewed as the signal announcing the annual flooding of the Nile River, the very source of life for their civilization. Have you ever wondered how a community living more than 5,000 years ago could observe and calculate astronomy with such precision? The answer appears to be far more complex than we once imagined. And two other important tombs further strengthen this theory. Tomb S837 contained a woman buried with exquisite jewelry and a broken ceramic vessel, ritual symbols that would later appear in the Royal Egyptian pyramid texts. This suggests a deep connection between folk beliefs and the official religion that later developed. Meanwhile, Tomb S874 held a woman buried with a ceremonial staff and a wig made from natural fibers. What makes this tomb especially fascinating is that its arrangement was linked to the summer solstice, another major astronomical event of the year. All of this suggests that ancient people did not bury their dead based only on emotion or tradition. They were also relying on a highly sophisticated system of cosmic observation. When the researchers looked at the cemetery as a whole, they realized something extraordinary. These tombs were not simply burial sites, they were cultural ignition points. It was here that the earliest rituals, symbols, and spiritual beliefs first took shape. Over time, those small traditions gradually evolved, spread across society, and eventually became the foundation of the ancient Egyptian religion we recognize today. In fact, the Adaima Cemetery itself later came to be regarded by ancient Egyptians as a sacred place, almost like a primitive form of temple. So this raises an important question. If the religion of the pharaohs did not begin with royal power, but instead with the humble graves of ordinary people, have we misunderstood the origins of one of the greatest civilizations in history? I think we probably have. But what do you think? The tomb of the Nameless pharaoh on the sacred mountain of Anubis. In the harsh deserts of central Egypt, where scorching winds have swept across thousands of years of history, an ancient mystery has just been awakened on the sacred mountain of Anubis, a pyramid-shaped peak located in Sohag province, Egypt. archaeologists have uncovered a mysterious royal tomb dating back approximately 3,550 to 3,700 years. And the shocking part is that the identity of the pharaoh buried inside remains completely unknown. The discovery was announced during excavations at the cemetery on Mount Anubis, a sacred area deeply connected to the funeral rituals of ancient Egypt. About 23 feet beneath the ground, researchers uncovered a limestone burial chamber surrounded by a massive mud brick structure standing nearly 16 feet tall. Clear evidence that this was not an ordinary grave, but the resting place of one of the most powerful figures of the era. But what truly left archaeologists stunned was not only the scale of the structure, but the mysterious traces still preserved inside. At the entrance of the tomb, researchers discovered inscriptions carved on both sides mentioning two powerful goddesses from ancient Egyptian mythology, Isis and Nephthys. These deities were closely associated with death, protection, and the journey into the afterlife. This immediately suggested that the tomb carried enormous religious significance and was far more than a simple burial site. Deeper inside, archaeologists also found bands of yellow inscriptions believed to have once recorded the name of the tomb's owner in Egyptian hieroglyphics. However, after thousands of years of erosion and decay, the inscriptions were severely damaged, leaving behind only scattered fragments of decoration, like pieces of a story torn apart by history itself. So who was buried in this tomb? That is the question now fueling intense debate among archaeologists. According to Dr. Joseph Wagner from the University of Pennsylvania, who leads the excavation team, the architecture and decorative style of the tomb share many similarities with the tomb of Pharaoh Senebkhay, a king he previously discovered in 2014. Pharaoh Senebkhay is known to have ruled during Egypt's Second Intermediate Period, around 1700 to 1550 BC, a time marked by political chaos and instability. Based on these similarities, researchers believe the mysterious pharaoh of Mount Anubis may have belonged to the same era. But to this day, his true identity remains an unsolved mystery. Can you imagine it? A king who once ruled over a vast land is now remembered only through a few fading stone walls and worn inscriptions standing alone in the barren desert. The discovery becomes even more significant when Dr. Muhammad Ismail Khalid, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, stated that this tomb not only helps researchers better understand royal burial traditions, but also provides a deeper look into the complex political landscape of that period. In other words, this is not just a tomb. It is a crucial missing piece of an entire hidden era. However, to truly understand why this site is so extraordinary, it is important to know that Mount Anubis is not an ordinary mountain. It is a sacred mountain in the desert of Abydos, featuring a naturally pyramid-shaped peak located in Sohag province in central Egypt. Since the reign of Pharaoh Senwosret, the third of the 12th dynasty, around 1878 to 1839 BC, this region has been regarded as the center of royal funerary complexes, a place believed to connect the world of the living with the realm of the gods. That is why the discovery of an unidentified royal tomb here is far more than a simple archaeological find. It is like opening a doorway into a distant past where the boundary between mythology and history seems to disappear. My friends, after all the discoveries we've explored today, perhaps the most terrifying thing is not the strange mummies, the sealed tombs, or the civilizations that vanished long ago, but the fact that modern humanity still does not fully understand its own past. Every skeleton, every ancient inscription, and every artifact unearthed feels like a missing piece of human history. Do you think so too? Or do you have a different perspective? If you do, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. And don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any other incredible discoveries. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you again in the next video.